There comes a moment along the path when the soul begins to move from a completely different place. It's no longer the mind seeking meaning, nor the body longing for stability. It's something far deeper, a kind of inner fire that ignites without your consent, without your planning or reasoning. It arises spontaneously, without warning, as if something ancient within you has stirred awake after a long, silent slumber. It's not euphoria. It's not motivation. It's a vibration, primal and intense, that shakes you from the inside and changes your entire way of being in the world. This fire does not burn to destroy. It reveals. It doesn't push you forward. It awakens you. And when it begins to activate, everything that is not truly you starts to fall away. You can no longer lie to yourself. You can no longer hide behind roles or routines. Your soul begins to remember why it came here in the first place. And this memory, though it doesn't come with words, feels like a silent urgency that shifts everything. One of the first signs is an inner impulse that you can't quite explain, but you also can't ignore. It doesn't come from logic, nor is it triggered by external goals. It's a call that vibrates straight from your chest, a fire that doesn't ask for permission, that doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It appears suddenly, like something inside you has been waiting for far too long to be lit, and now refuses to remain dormant. This impulse might not always have a clear shape, but it has direction. It moves you toward what is real, toward what feels alive. It pulls you away from whatever dims your light, no matter how familiar or secure. And even if the world doesn't understand why you're changing, you do. You're not searching for something new. You're responding to something ancient that has always been there, waiting. That impulse doesn't come with a map, but it's unmistakable. It may not tell you exactly what to do, but it makes it absolutely clear what you can no longer continue doing. You begin to wake up with a soft but persistent discomfort, a kind of restlessness that no longer disappears with distractions or noise, because it's not about filling voids anymore. It's about acknowledging that something within you is ready to burn, to illuminate, to transform everything from the root. You start to feel that pretending is no longer an option, that remaining in comfort feels like betrayal. You hear a voice deep inside you that can no longer be silenced by logic, that refuses to surrender to excuses, that cannot be numbed by distractions. This voice doesn't scream, it burns. And even if a part of you wishes you could extinguish it to keep fitting in, you know that it's already too late for that. You've crossed an internal threshold. The first spark has been lit. You also begin to notice that what used to satisfy you now frustrates you, not because you've become ungrateful, but because you now see what you couldn't see before, that you were dimming your own light to sustain structures that no longer sustain you. This inner fire doesn't destroy what's outside. It simply makes what isn't aligned unbearable. It pushes you, not as punishment, but out of integrity. And though it might hurt, it also liberates. With every step you take in the direction of truth, the fire grows stronger, not as a punishment, but as guidance. You can no longer fully fall asleep. You can no longer lull your soul with hollow routines, because something within you has been activated, something that doesn't ask for explanation, only space, something that refuses to bargain with fear, only with truth. This fire doesn't arrive to give you certainty. It comes to return you to yourself, to who you were before the masks, before the disguises, before the quiet agreements with the parts of life that were extinguishing your light. It doesn't ask you to know the whole destination, only not to deny yourself the beginning. Because once the fire starts to awaken, there's no turning back. The only way forward is to burn with purpose. You also begin to realize that this impulse doesn't need external validation. You're no longer waiting for approval or hoping someone else will understand what you're feeling, because you know from the deepest place within that this fire doesn't belong to anyone else. It's yours. It was born with you. It has always been there. Only now it's becoming visible, not as a passing emotion, but as a force that permeates everything. Your way of speaking, choosing, living. And that's what truly changes everything. You're not chasing a goal. You're returning to yourself. Every time you listen to that inner impulse and act from that space, the fire becomes more distinct, more present. You start choosing differently, not out of obligation, not from guilt, not from the fear of loss. You choose from a place of expansion, from that sacred space where something inside you ignites and nothing else makes sense unless it vibrates in resonance with that flame. Even when you feel lost, the fire doesn't leave. It remains, like an ember that refuses to be extinguished, not by doubt, not by fatigue. It stays there, quietly reminding you that something greater awaits, that no matter how many times you disconnect, you can always return. Because this fire isn't snuffed out by time. It only fades when you stop listening. And now, more than ever, you are beginning to listen. And so, almost without realizing it, the fire begins to guide your days, not with grand signs, but with small certainties, the kind you feel in your chest, the kind that don't ask for permission or explanation, the kind that burn but do not destroy, because they're not here to break you, they're here to reveal you. Slowly, you're remembering what your soul has always known, that you came here to light something up, something the world cannot extinguish. The second sign comes when you begin to release what once felt essential, and you do so without pain. People, places, habits, even long-held dreams that no longer resonate with who you are now. These things begin to fall away. There's no bitterness, no dramatic farewell. Instead, a quiet clarity settles within you, as though a wiser part of yourself, existing on a higher plane, is making decisions on your behalf. You might not fully understand the reasons behind this detachment, but you feel deep down that it isn't about loss, it's about cleansing. Your inner fire doesn't just illuminate, it also burns away the things that no longer serve a purpose. And what's most surprising is that in the act of letting go, you don't feel emptiness, you feel light. It's as though everything you release frees up internal space that had been occupied merely out of habit or inertia. It no longer hurts as much to step away from what was once part of your life for years, because now you understand something fundamental. Not everything that has played a role in your story is meant to accompany you in fulfilling your purpose. Certain relationships, beliefs, even parts of your identity, some of them are meant to stay behind as you step forward into a truer version of yourself. You're not running away. You're refining, tuning in more precisely to your essence. You no longer carry the weight of the past out of loyalty. You don't continue to hold on to what dims your light just because a part of you still feels guilty. Your inner fire isn't asking you to destroy anything. It simply makes it impossible to keep ignoring what no longer vibrates with you. And this clarity you feel isn't intellectual. It's energetic. Suddenly, what you used to tolerate with effort becomes suffocating, and instead of forcing yourself to stay, you choose to leave. This fire awakens an intolerance for self-deception. You can no longer justify relationships paths, or behaviors that don't align with your truth. Not out of judgment, but out of integrity. There's no more room to keep convincing yourself you're okay in spaces where you're clearly not. The fire now shines so brightly that it reveals everything you once managed to hide from yourself. And once you see it, you can't go back. What you're letting go of doesn't get erased. You honor it, but you no longer need it. There's no paralyzing nostalgia, only calm gratitude. You recognize that everything that leaves makes room for something more aligned with your present truth. Even if you don't yet have a clear vision of where you're going, your soul already knows. This new space opening up isn't a void, it's a preparation. Each act of letting go, when done from a place of authenticity, strengthens the fire within you. Every time you choose loyalty to your inner voice, that fire grows, because this inner fire isn't sustained by fear or attachment. It's fueled by your choice to prioritize truth over comfort. And slowly, that's exactly what you're doing. You're releasing who you no longer are to make space for who you're about to become. You also begin to notice that every time you release something from the soul, something inside you rearranges. You might not be able to explain it with your mind, but your body feels it. A tension eases, a burden lifts, a new space expands. It's not that letting go has become easy. It's that you can no longer keep holding on without dimming your own light. The fire that's awakening inside you doesn't negotiate with what doesn't resonate. It doesn't tolerate half-truths. It doesn't feed on what once was. It only responds to what's real in the present moment. Even when the goodbye is silent, you know it's final. Not because you've become cold, but because you've become certain. A part of you has already stepped into a new stage. Staying behind would be like trying to breathe in a place where there's no more oxygen. You no longer define yourself by what you leave behind. You define yourself by the profound act of choosing yourself, by the silent decision not to betray yourself, by the invisible gesture of honoring your evolution, even when it hurts. This inner fire is showing you that true loss isn't about losing others, it's about losing yourself. And that's no longer a risk you're willing to take. That's why your choices are different now. Not because you're tougher, but because you're more aware. You no longer fear walking alone if that companionship asks you to shrink. You no longer move from obligation, only from vibration. And if someone or something doesn't respect that new internal level, you let it go, not with resentment, but with reverence. And in that new space, which once felt like loneliness, you now feel presence. Because once you stop filling your life with things that don't vibrate with you, you start to truly feel your own essence. You begin to realize that you don't need to fill every corner. You just need to let your fire inhabit them. And that flame, even if small, is so pure and so true that you could never again settle for being lit by anything less than your own essence. You've stopped fearing the emptiness. Now, you see it as the prelude to purpose, as the sacred space where your soul begins to build what's real. And you, who are letting go without resentment, are showing that your fire is already burning, not out of reaction, but from awareness. Because you know that anyone who lets go from a place of truth is making space for something far greater. You also recognize that this kind of release is unlike anything you've experienced before. You're not closing cycles with anger or running to protect yourself. You're letting go from the deep understanding that your energy no longer fits there, and it doesn't have to. You no longer try to force something that was once beautiful to keep existing. because you've come to understand that true love, genuine connection, and real purpose never ask you to betray yourself in order to stay. You've stopped romanticizing sacrifice. You've learned that your soul did not come here to hold up what's falling apart at the expense of your light. What does it mean to keep holding on to what no longer resonates with you? It's not loyalty, it's abandonment of self. And you've decided to return to yourself, even if it means reconfiguring everything, even if it leaves you for a while in the silence of what hasn't arrived yet. Because that silence no longer scares you. You now see it as fertile ground. Every renunciation, even the painful ones, becomes a declaration. You're declaring that you deserve peace, that your energy is sacred, that your soul is now prioritizing purpose over attachment. And the universe listens to those invisible declarations. It responds when it sees you let go without fear of losing. Because you finally remembered something essential. What's true never leaves. What's true either stays or returns in greater alignment. And in that quiet act of release, you're not just setting others free, you're setting yourself free. You're making space for yourself, for the new that's trying to emerge from the depths of your being, for that voice that no longer has to compete with external noise, for that fire that now burns clearer, cleaner, steadier. You're learning to live without the weight of the unnecessary. You're walking lighter, more authentically, more yourself. And that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It means that finally, pain no longer makes your decisions. The fire does. The truth does. That part of you that doesn't need to speak has already chosen to keep going, burning bright. The third sign is when you begin to act without asking for permission. You no longer need others' validation to move forward. You don't wait for approval from your environment or for someone to tell you it's the right time. You simply do it, not from impulsiveness, but from an inner force that has become impossible to ignore, a silent certainty pushing you forward even when the full path is still unclear. That fire isn't asking for explanations, it's asking to be embodied. This action doesn't come from ego, it comes from the soul. You're not acting to prove anything. You're acting because you can no longer sit still while something inside you begs to be expressed, created, transformed. It's as if a part of you grew tired of waiting for the perfect conditions, as if you finally realized the perfect moment doesn't appear on its own. It's built from presence, from choice, from the kind of fire that won't go out, even when everything around you suggests it's not the time. You're no longer stopped by not yets. You're no longer held back by the doubts of those who don't feel what you feel. You've started honoring your inner impulse as a compass. You've understood that this movement born from within isn't chasing instant results. It's searching for alignment, action that matches your vibration, your transformation, all that you've been holding in out of fear of not being understood. And even though you don't know exactly where each step will lead, you know you can't keep waiting, because now you understand that postponing what's true is a form of self-abandonment. There are ideas, words, creations, and decisions that if they're not born now, will wither inside you. And you, who've been building this fire for so long, are no longer willing to let it die just to keep others comfortable. You start with small but authentic steps. You begin to make decisions that once seemed too big, to take risks that don't come from chaos, but from an inner steadiness that whispers, "This now aligns with who I am." And even if the world doesn't respond right away, You no longer wait for it to, because now you know that acting from your fire is already a response, already an agreement with yourself. This new strength isn't aggressive, it's calm, but unshakable. It doesn't impose, but it doesn't bargain either. It's that voice telling you that if you don't move now, the fire will start turning into ash. And you've decided you're not letting that happen again. Because now you know that acting from your center isn't a luxury, it's a soul necessity. You also realize that this kind of action doesn't require applause. You're not looking for recognition. You don't need anyone to see it or get it. You do it because not doing it would be a quiet betrayal of your soul. Because something in you has changed at the core. You're not moving to become someone. You're moving because you are someone now, and that someone can't stay quiet in spaces where their fire has no room. Every action you take from that inner center reinforces your presence. You don't need big wins or instant results. The fire within isn't rushed, it's committed. And you too are done waiting to feel ready. You've realized no one ever feels ready for what truly matters, that the fire doesn't ask for certainty, it asks for devotion. And if you keep waiting for everything to make sense before moving, you'll slowly burn out without even noticing. But once you surrender to it, something new begins to emerge. Not the full path, but the next step. A small step, so clear you can't ignore it. And when you take it, without needing approval, the fire grows stronger. Because that's what feeds it. Coherence. Not outside conditions, not others' judgments, not results, just the decision to stop postponing yourself. Even if no one else notices, you know what's awakening within. Because every time you act from that fire, everything shifts. Your energy becomes ordered. Your mind quiets. Your emotions align. There's no more inner conflict, because now there's direction. And you don't need to explain it. You feel the deep relief of having chosen yourself. You've started building yourself through movement, discovering who you are, not from waiting, but from action, rooted in your truth. You no longer need someone else to tell you the time is now, because deep down, you already know it is. You also recognize that every time you act from that inner flame, your entire energy field responds. You don't need to understand it to know it. You feel it in your chest expanding, in your breath growing lighter, in the absence of that tension you used to think was normal when doing what was expected instead of what was real. It's not that things become easier. It's that now, the hard things no longer paralyze you. Because moving with fire means moving with roots. And that makes you unstoppable. You no longer do things out of habit. You don't work just to emotionally survive. You don't speak just to fill silence. Now, every gesture carries intention. Every step holds presence. Because when fire moves you, everything you do leaves a deeper mark, even if no one sees it. It doesn't matter if others recognize it, you know it. And that inner knowing is more powerful than any external gaze. You also realize there's no going back. You can't return to acting from disconnection without your soul feeling it like a wound. Because now you understand the difference between acting from impulse and acting from alignment. And that difference is everything. You've learned that when you move from fire, you don't drain, you expand. You don't lose yourself. You sharpen. You don't hesitate. You move forward, even in uncertainty. And something even deeper begins to happen. The fire starts to give you identity. You no longer define yourself by your past, by your roles, or by the story others tell about you. You define yourself by your capacity to move from essence, from that invisible force that no longer fades or gets outsourced, from the coherence between who you are and what you do. That's what purpose is, the exact place where what you feel inside takes shape in the world. And it doesn't matter if no one tells you you're on the right path. You know it, not because of results, but because of resonance. Because when your inner fire becomes direction, no doubt can compete with the certainty of a soul set ablaze. The fourth sign appears when your resistance to change begins to dissolve. You no longer fight what is shifting. You stop clinging to the familiar out of fear. Instead of fearing movement, you begin to welcome it openly. Not because everything is suddenly clear, but because something within you has understood that the new doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to reveal you. Your inner fire has prepared you to walk through transitions without losing yourself. And that's why what once felt like chaos now begins to feel like possibility. You also discover that change no longer sweeps you away like it used to. You don't feel like a victim of movement, but a conscious part of it. You've stopped searching for stability in external things and are now finding it in your own ability to adapt without dimming your light. You no longer cling to what once worked because you know that what served you yesterday could become a cage today. Your fire has taught you how to let go without losing your essence, how to move without falling apart, how to change without betraying yourself. Each transition is no longer a threat, but an activation. You feel something in you grow stronger every time you let go without fear. When you take a new path without having every step figured out, and you don't do it unconsciously, you do it with radical trust in what you're feeling inside. Your fire doesn't need certainty, it needs room to burn. And when change comes, you don't block it, you recognize it as part of the design. You start to notice that the unknown no longer feels so heavy. You used to avoid it, fear it, delay it. And now, even though the vertigo remains, there's also momentum, because your inner fire pushes you not toward safety, but toward truth. And you, who already know what it feels like to betray yourself, choose more firmly what truly represents you. Even if it comes with no guarantees, change no longer feels like loss. It feels like expansion. Even in the midst of disorder, you feel something aligning inside. Even if the world shakes, you're steadier. Not because nothing affects you, but because everything that moves you now makes you stronger. You no longer see movement as a threat, but as part of your awakening, a necessary reconfiguration in someone who has ignited their inner fire and is willing to let that fire transform whatever it touches. You don't need to control every step anymore. You trust more in what you feel than in what you planned. You're no longer anxious about not knowing how things will end, because you've realized your inner fire isn't interested in endings. It's interested in transformations, and you're finally willing to walk through them. You've also come to recognize that every change in your life, even the most uncomfortable one, arrives with a message you're no longer willing to ignore. You've become so sensitive to misalignment that now you can feel when a chapter has ended, even if you can't yet name it. Before, you waited for external signs to let go. Now your inner fire is enough guidance. It speaks to you without words, telling you something has completed its cycle, and with increasing humility, you make room for the new. You've stopped negotiating with stagnation. You know staying in a place where you no longer resonate isn't stability, it's self-abandonment. And though the leap into the unknown still causes vertigo, you now trust your ability to fly. Because every time you've dared to release what no longer belonged to you, life has shown you something greater, cleaner, more aligned, and that memory sustains you. You've also stopped seeing repetitive cycles as punishment. Now you see them as teachers. You understand that if something returns, it's not so you can hold it the same way, but so you can choose differently. Your inner fire has awakened a consciousness that no longer allows you to repeat what you once normalized, and that gives you power. The power not to react, but to respond. The power not to resist, but to move with the flow without getting lost in it. You've understood that change is not a disruption of your purpose. It's part of its activation. You're not here to do just one thing. You're here to evolve, to transform, to let old versions of yourself die off when they no longer represent you. And your fire knows that. That's why it burns when you stay too long in a place where you no longer grow. That's why it pushes you, even when you're still afraid, not to make you suffer, but to remind you of who you are. And in that silent memory of your soul, you begin to understand. There is no going backward when fire is leading the way. Even what looks like a detour is actually redirecting you. Even what seems like a loss is actually lightening your load. Because now, everything that moves, whether you understand it or not, vibrates in perfect rhythm with the purpose your soul has already set in motion. Sign number 5. Your truth no longer fits in small spaces. You've begun to speak, to express yourself, to reveal parts of you that you once hid in order not to disturb, not to disrupt the peace. But now, you can't hold it back. Not because you're trying to impose anything, but because the silence was consuming you. Your inner fire has started to push your voice outward, and that voice doesn't want to shout. It wants to resonate. You're not seeking attention. You're seeking alignment. And that's why what you used to hide is now shared with a calm strength that changes everything. You also realize that the way you express yourself has evolved. You no longer speak to convince. You speak to liberate. You no longer choose your words out of fear of being too much. You choose them out of respect for yourself. Your voice has stopped being a tool of adaptation and has become a channel for truth. And that truth may not always be comfortable, but it's yours, and that is enough. You begin to see how long you've been holding yourself back, how often you sacrificed your own peace just to maintain someone else's, how much you silenced what needed to be said just to avoid conflict. But now, the fire burning at your center won't let you stay silent where you need to speak your truth, because what isn't expressed gets blocked, and you've decided to unblock yourself. You no longer care about being too intense, too sensitive, too direct, because you've stopped measuring your voice to fit into spaces not meant for your truth. You've realized your energy was never meant to go unnoticed. It was meant to transform. And every time you speak from that fire, you don't impose, you illuminate, you don't attack, you reflect, you don't push, you awaken. Even when the right words don't come, your presence speaks, your gaze, your silence, your frequency. Everything you once repressed now flows with a different rhythm, because your voice is no longer just sound, it's the extension of your soul. And that soul has remembered its purpose, to hold truth, even when it shakes, even when it isn't embraced. And most importantly, you've stopped asking for permission to be yourself, not from the ego, but from authenticity. You no longer wait for a safe space to show yourself. You are that space. You are that sanctuary. Because when you speak from what burns inside, you're not seeking applause. You're affirming that you can no longer dim your fire just to fit into someone else's comfort. You also notice that by allowing yourself to speak from that deep place, something within you comes into order, not because others understand or accept it, but because you finally stop fragmenting yourself. Each time you express what you used to hold back, you don't just free yourself, you integrate. And that integration feels like rest, like expansion, like finally being able to breathe without asking for permission. You've let go of needing ideal circumstances to be yourself, because you now understand that every moment you choose to be a vessel of truth is a sacred act, even if it goes unnoticed. You're no longer speaking from a need to be heard. You're speaking because what you carry inside can no longer stay in shadow. You know that every time you repress your light, something dims within you, and you're no longer willing to allow that. You also realize your voice doesn't need to be perfect. You don't have to know everything, say it flawlessly, or have a polished narrative. You just need to be honest, consistent, present. Fire doesn't demand form, it demands surrender. And you've begun to surrender, with less shame, with less guilt, and with more loyalty to what you truly feel. And it shows, not in volume, but in vibration. Your energy starts to speak for you. Your very presence becomes a message. You no longer strive to explain what others can't resonate with. You simply live it. You no longer argue your truth. You embody it. Because you understand that the real impact doesn't come from what's shouted, but from what's held with soul. By speaking from your fire, you also learn to hold the echo, to accept that there won't always be a response, that not everyone will know what to do with your truth. But instead of shrinking, you remain. Because now you know your purpose is not to please, it is to awaken. And awakening may be uncomfortable, but it always transforms. You are no longer a reflection of what others expect. You are the manifestation of a voice that has been ignited from within. And that voice, even if it trembles, even if it hesitates, even if it's still learning how to speak itself, can no longer be silenced, because your fire holds it now, and that fire will not go out. The sixth sign appears quietly, almost invisibly. You don't force anything, you don't make big moves, and yet everything starts to shift. People begin to walk away without drama, without a fight. Others enter your life for reasons you can't quite explain. Places that once gave you comfort now feel strange and distant. Outwardly, you're doing nothing different, but inside, your energy is no longer the same. Something has ignited, a fire, and that fire is starting to reconfigure your world. You may not notice it at first, or you might even feel confused, but soon, a deeper understanding arrives. This is not chaos. This is alignment. The path is being cleared ahead of your next step. You're not being punished. You're being prepared. And you begin to see that this reorganization of your life is not about loss, but about resonance. There's no need for angry goodbyes, no need to chase explanations. What no longer vibrates with your essence simply dissolves, quietly, without resistance, as if the fire burning within you has begun to expose every false connection, every fear-based pattern, every attachment you once held out of habit or insecurity. You don't have to fight. You don't even have to decide. Life, now aligned with your deeper truth, decides for you. And yes, it can hurt. At first, there's confusion, even grief. But that pain gives way to relief. You stop pretending. You stop forcing yourself to fit into roles and spaces that no longer reflect your soul. You no longer have to hide just to belong. And in that release, peace finds you. Not the shallow peace of comfort zones, but the peace of authenticity. You start to stand taller, speak clearer, act truer. You no longer shrink to fit in. You no longer hand over your energy just to avoid discomfort. You no longer stay quiet just to keep the peace, because this fire inside of you isn't trying to destroy, it's trying to reveal. And anything built on lies, illusions, or outdated versions of you will melt away, not with violence, but with grace. No pressure, no force, just natural, inevitable transformation. And here's the most beautiful part. As your old world fades, a new one begins to rise. You begin attracting people who don't just like you, they recognize you. People who don't drain your energy, they fuel it. People who don't require you to dim your light, they help you shine it brighter. So if this resonates with you, if you've felt this shift, if you're living this change, know that you're not alone. This is the path of awakening, of alignment, of true power. And if you're walking this path, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. If this message stirred something deep inside you, don't leave without taking a step further. Subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next message your soul is waiting to hear. This space isn't for everyone. It's for those who are ready to let go of the version they were taught to be and rise into the truth of who they really are. Because this is just the beginning. Have you ever wished you could be unbreakable? To walk through life without the weight of pain, without the sting of criticism, without the ache of rejection or the devastation of betrayal? Maybe you've imagined what it would be like to be untouchable, not in a physical sense, but emotionally, mentally, to be able to smile genuinely without having to fake it, to stand tall without needing to hide the trembling happening inside. Maybe you're tired of pretending, tired of showing up every day with a brave face when you're crumbling silently behind your smile. You've learned how to carry yourself with strength, how to keep going, how to function, but not how to feel safe in your own vulnerability. You've become an expert at surviving, but surviving isn't the same as living. This video isn't here to teach you how to harden yourself further. It's not another motivational speech about grinding harder or pushing through. No, this is something else. This is an invitation to stop running, to stop performing strength, and instead to finally meet yourself fully, honestly, even painfully, because real strength doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from moving through it with awareness, with gentleness, and with radical honesty. So stay, don't scroll away, just for a few minutes, stay with me, because maybe, just maybe, this is the moment where your healing begins. Maybe something deep inside you has been waiting for this, for words that don't ask you to be more, do more, fix yourself, or change, but instead, words that tell you it's okay to feel, it's okay to break, it's okay to be exactly where you are. Have you ever longed to be immune to the world, to stop feeling the subtle stabs of being misunderstood, left out, not chosen, to no longer be shaken by what people say or don't say, by who stays and who leaves, by the silence in between words? Maybe you've fantasized about that version of you, the one who doesn't flinch anymore, who has finally outgrown the ache, but you haven't, not yet, and that's okay. Maybe you're exhausted, not from work or school or the daily responsibilities, but from something heavier, the pressure to always appear okay, to keep up the image of someone who has it together, who's always strong, who never needs help. Maybe all you've wanted is a break from being the strong one, to pause, a breath, a moment where it's safe to be soft, to be messy, to not know. But here's a truth you don't hear often. The more you try to escape pain, the more it owns you. The more you numb it, avoid it, hide it, the more power it gains over your life. Pain is not the enemy, it's a messenger, and ignoring it doesn't make it go away. It only makes it louder in the dark corners of your mind. This isn't weakness. This is what it means to be human. The difference is that some people are just better at pretending they don't feel it. They've learned to wear masks, to laugh loud enough to drown out the cries within. But that's not healing, that's survival. Carl Jung, a pioneer of depth psychology, once said, "We are not what happened to us, we are what we choose to become." And within that choice, the choice to stop running and start feeling, lies true strength. Strength is not found in building walls around your heart, or in pretending you don't care. It's not about becoming cold, or indifferent, or detached. Real power doesn't look like perfection. It looks like presence, even when the wound is still raw, even when the tears still come, even when you're still figuring it all out. Real courage is about facing the shadows within you. It's about bringing light to the parts of yourself you've pushed away. It's about listening, really listening, to the pain that's been trying to tell you something for years, because healing doesn't start with control, it starts with surrender. If you've made it this far, it's not by chance. There's something in these words that's reaching for you, the real you. Not the version you show the world, but the one who's tired of feeling everything so deeply. The one who feels like their heart is always exposed, always vulnerable, always reaching for something more, something softer, something safe. You've walked through life feeling like others had a secret manual, a code for happiness and resilience that you somehow missed. You've compared your insides to other people's outsides, and in doing so, you've convinced yourself that something's wrong with you, that you're too sensitive, too emotional, too much. But what if I told you that this very sensitivity is your gift, that your depth, your tenderness, your ability to feel so much is not a flaw, but a superpower the world tried to convince you to bury? And yes, healing asks a lot of you. It asks you to face uncomfortable truths, to sit with feelings that don't come with easy answers, to stop blaming everything outside of you and begin to turn inward. Because here's the hardest truth of all. What hurts you most isn't always what happens externally. It's what that moment touches inside of you. The rejection that activates a story you've carried since childhood. The silence that echoes an old feeling of being invisible. The betrayal that cracks open a part of you that never fully healed. It's not them, it's the wound they touched. That's where your power lives. Not in controlling the world around you, but in understanding the world within you. Not in shielding yourself from ever being hurt again, but in learning how to walk through hurt with presence and grace. You see, we all carry unfinished stories, childhoods we didn't fully process, feelings we were taught to suppress, wounds we tried to cover up with achievement, perfection, or pride. But what we bury doesn't disappear. It waits patiently until one day it asks to be seen. And maybe that day is today. So take a deep breath, place your hand over your heart, and listen. Not to the noise of the world, but to your own voice, the one you've silenced for far too long. You don't have to be unbreakable. You just have to be real. And being real means being with yourself exactly as you are, cracked, healing, feeling, and still worthy of love. That is the beginning of everything. Jung teaches us something both unsettling and liberating. What wounds us most in the external world is nothing more than a mirror reflecting the unresolved chaos within our inner landscape. This is why two people can live the exact same experience and yet respond in completely different ways. One walks through a storm with quiet composure, while another collapses under the weight of a passing comment. It was never the event itself that carried the power, it's always the place inside us where it lands. That's where the deepest truth lies, both painful and illuminating. We go on suffering because somewhere deep within, we still cling to the illusion that we can control how the world treats us. We still believe that if we are kind enough, wise enough, understanding enough, we will somehow be protected. That if we check all the right boxes, life will repay us with fairness, with love, with immunity to pain. But control, as comforting as it may seem, is nothing more than a mirage. The tighter we cling to it, the deeper we entangle ourselves in our own suffering. Do you truly want to stop suffering? Then stop shielding yourself from pain. The path is not about building thicker walls, stronger armor, or better defenses. It's about becoming more aware, as long as you believe that others must change in order for you to stop hurting. You remain a prisoner, chained to their behavior, their moods, their presence or absence, their approval or neglect. True freedom begins the moment you realize that the outside world holds no power over you unless it finds something within you to echo back to. And it's precisely there, in that invisible space, where the most important battle of your life unfolds. Not in the external world, but within the shadows of your unconscious. The parts of yourself that you don't see, that you don't yet understand, that you've buried or rejected. Those are the forces that end up controlling you. What you avoid becomes what guides you. What you repress begins to speak in silence, in illness, in repetition, in fear. Waking up isn't a gentle process. It doesn't arrive wrapped in clarity or comfort. It's a rupture, a sudden and undeniable call from the depths of your soul. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't arrive when you feel ready. It bursts through the cracks at just the right moment, often disguised as loss, confusion, or emotional collapse, to destroy everything you thought was solid. Everything you believed to be true about yourself, about others, about life. And that is what we are going to explore together. The crack through which the light enters, the precise moment when you begin to suspect that what you believed you were controlling may never have been in your hands to begin with. If these words stir something in you, if you feel a shift, a stirring in your chest, even if you can't name it yet, then you are not alone. This journey is yours too. You are not broken, you are awakening. Thank you for choosing to walk this invisible path with us. The greatest lie we've been taught is that we are fully in charge of our lives. Wake up. That's not true. Not while you're still functioning on autopilot, not while you react without reflection, feel without naming, or make choices from wounds that remain unhealed, only to sabotage yourself later without even realizing why. This journey asks for courage, for patience, for brutal honesty, but it also offers something invaluable in return. The possibility of living not from fear, not from habit, but from truth. Your truth, not the one inherited from others, not the one shaped by survival, but the one buried beneath the noise, the one waiting to be remembered. Keep going. You're closer than you think. Carl Jung once made a profound statement. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And the truth is, that is exactly what's happening to you right now, whether you realize it or not. That pain you feel but can't explain. That sudden burst of anger that seems to come out of nowhere. that wave of sadness that washes over you unexpectedly. None of it is random. These are not just fleeting emotions or bad days. These are echoes of something deeper. They are messages, warnings, fragments of yourself you've left behind. Parts you've suppressed, hidden away, ignored out of fear, shame, or habit. Jung called this hidden territory the unconscious, and it's not some vague, blurry shadow lingering in the background. It's alive, it's intelligent, it's a dynamic network of memories, unprocessed pain, unspoken desires, deep-rooted fears, and it never stops speaking. It influences your choices, shapes your reactions, colors your relationships, and most of all, it insists on being heard. Even if you try to pretend it's not there, even if you bury it beneath productivity, distractions, or denial. Have you ever wondered why certain words, just a few syllables, can shatter you while others walk away unfazed? Why certain criticisms sting you to the core, or why specific people make you feel instantly defensive, angry, or small? It's because they've touched a raw spot, a wound still open. Something inside you that was never really healed, and as long as it still hurts, it means it hasn't been truly faced. You've only tucked it away in the corners of your mind, hoping time would erase it, but wounds don't vanish on their own, they fester. And eventually, they find a way to speak, whether through your emotions, your behaviors, or the chaos around you. Jung didn't sugarcoat it, he said it plainly. You cannot change anything until you accept it. Condemning your darkness won't liberate you, it will only suffocate you. And yet, what have you been doing all this time? Judging yourself, silencing the parts of you that are crying out, repressing emotions, hoping that by not feeling them, they'll go away. But silence doesn't heal. Silence hides, and what's hidden doesn't disappear. It transforms into something darker. The unconscious doesn't dissolve just because you choose to ignore it. It adapts. It becomes clever. It starts whispering through patterns you can't break. In toxic relationships you keep falling into, even when you swear you've learned your lesson. In acts of self-sabotage, when everything is finally going well. In sudden waves of fear that paralyze you just as you start to feel at peace. These aren't bad coincidences. His isn't just life. This is your shadow, the repressed you, begging to be acknowledged, but you're still asleep. Do you want to stop being vulnerable to invisible pain? Then you must stop running from it. You must dare to look within. Because as long as you keep your unconscious in the dark, your emotions will pull the strings and you'll keep calling it fate, or worse, bad luck. And here's the paradox. The more you try to armor yourself from the outside, by being strong, distant, unfeeling, the more exposed you become on the inside. True strength isn't about building walls. It's about learning what lies behind them. Real safety doesn't come from numbing or shutting down. It comes from integration, from making peace with all the parts of you, even the messy, painful, uncomfortable ones. Being invulnerable doesn't mean you are untouchable. It means you've sat with your demons long enough to no longer fear them. It means you've understood them, welcomed them, learned from them, and through that, they've lost their power over you. That's what we're aiming for, not invincibility, but authentic inner strength. Not a hardened shell, but a rooted self. And that journey begins the moment you stop avoiding your pain, and instead start listening to it. Too many people think the key to avoiding pain is shutting off, pretending not to care, putting on a mask of indifference. They say things like, "I'm over it," or "nothing gets to me anymore." But often, that's just the voice of someone bleeding internally, dying slowly from within while appearing composed on the surface, rusting behind a polished facade. But the real danger isn't in feeling too much. It's in not knowing what you feel or why you feel it. It's in being disconnected from yourself, acting on impulses you don't understand, reacting to wounds you haven't yet named. And that only happens when you haven't looked inward, when you haven't taken the most necessary, most terrifying, and most powerful journey of all, the journey into your own abyss. Because self-awareness isn't a luxury, it's not a spiritual hobby. It's a necessity. It's the difference between living a life that's yours and one that feels like it belongs to someone else. A life where you're a stranger to yourself. And if you don't take that journey, if you don't choose to look at what's been hidden, then life will keep mirroring it back to you. In the form of broken relationships, cycles you can't escape, emptiness you can't fill, and pain you can't outrun. So don't wait for life to scream louder. Don't wait until everything falls apart. The time to begin is now. To listen, to face, to remember, and to reclaim every part of who you are. Because healing doesn't start when the pain stops. It starts when you're finally ready to see it. When Jung so precisely said, "Learn all the theories, master all the techniques, but as you touch a human soul, be just another human soul." He wasn't speaking solely as a psychologist. He was speaking as someone who understood the sacred dance between two conscious beings. It wasn't merely advice for therapists or healers. It was an invitation to all of us to remember that our presence, our humanity, is far more powerful than our knowledge or our tools. That call to be just another human soul is not only directed outward, toward others, it's a call inward, to meet yourself. And that's where the deepest journey begins, the journey of truly seeing that part of yourself that you've hidden behind the mask of strength, of perfection, of control, the part that trembles beneath the surface, waiting for a moment of honesty, a pause in the performance. That soul, your soul, is quietly crying out to be seen, to be touched, to be held. And in the lands many of us come from, where historical wounds still pulse beneath the collective skin, the idea of emotional strength has been misunderstood. We were taught that being strong meant being silent, that to survive meant to harden, to hold back tears, to avoid conflict, to pretend that nothing hurts, that if you didn't speak of pain, maybe it would disappear. But that isn't strength, that's exile, that's the soul in hiding. Real strength, the kind that liberates, emerges when you stop concealing your wounds and begin bringing them into the light. Not as weaknesses to be ashamed of, but as essential, irreplaceable parts of who you are. You don't become invincible by building higher walls. You become free by recognizing that what has already been embraced inside you can no longer be used against you. When you make peace with your shadows, your fears, your insecurities, your past failures, something profound happens. You stop reacting blindly to the world. You start choosing. You no longer live as an emotional puppet pulled by invisible strings, and in a world where so many live on autopilot, that simple act of self-awareness becomes revolutionary. Jung called this process individuation. It might sound clinical or abstract to our Latin hearts, but in essence, it's something deeply personal, even sacred. Individuation is the lifelong path of becoming who you truly are, not who your family expects, not what the church demands, not what society deems acceptable, not even what your ego wishes to project, but what rises from the tension and harmony between your light and your shadow. It's not about chasing perfection, as Jung wisely said, It's about reconciliation. It's not about becoming better. It's about becoming whole. And here lies a secret very few dare to say out loud. The more you run from your pain, the more it chases you. The more you resist being touched, the more fragile you become. But when you finally turn to face your pain, when you stop trying to erase it and instead choose to honor your entire being, the beautiful and the broken, the radiant and the shameful, then the world no longer holds power over you. This path, however, requires ancient courage, a deep, ancestral bravery, the kind of courage it takes to stop numbing yourself, to feel fully, to allow yourself to drop the masks, to sit quietly with your own raw self, because the seed of transformation is hidden exactly where it hurts the most. And that, right there, is the next threshold. To understand that pain is not your enemy. Pain is a sacred portal, a threshold into a power within you that you never knew you had. From a very young age, you were taught to fear pain. Maybe at home, you were told that suffering is weakness, that crying is a waste of time. That feeling too deeply makes you vulnerable. So you fled, you learned to deny, you distracted yourself, you stayed busy, you numbed everything that felt too intense. But pain doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It doesn't vanish because you pretend it's not there. Pain transforms. It puts on masks. It becomes anxiety, inexplicable anger, apathy, numbness. It shows up as impulses you don't understand, as heaviness you can't explain. It digs quiet tunnels inside you until one day everything collapses without warning. Jung never saw suffering as punishment. He saw it as a message from the soul, a cry from the unconscious, a language of the deeper self, the whole self, begging you to notice what you've been avoiding. He once said, "Depression is like a woman dressed in black. If she appears, don't shoo her away. Invite her in, offer her a seat, pour her a cup of coffee, and listen to what she has to say." But we don't listen, we distract ourselves, we bury ourselves in noise so we don't have to hear the one voice that matters most, our own. Because pain, when you dare to truly hear it, reveals something. It only hurts that much because you're still at war with yourself. And until you end that war, until you find the courage to sit with yourself in that uncomfortable silence, you'll keep running from a ghost that lives in your own house. The Latin American soul, rich with history, with unspoken pain, with dormant sensitivity, needs this medicine. The permission to feel, the right to grieve, the space to transform from the inside out. Because there is no revolution more powerful than the one that begins when a human being finally stops running from themselves. Even within you now, there is a quiet duality. One part of you wants to grow, to step boldly into the unknown. The other clings to what's familiar. Even if it hurts, it clings to what's safe, even if it suffocates. It's like an ancient voice buried deep within your spirit cries out for change, for rebirth. But your ego, so well trained in control, in comfort, tries to silence that voice with chains of habit and fear. And it is precisely in that clash between the need to be reborn and the resistance to let go where suffering is born. Change wounds. Letting go of old beliefs is painful. Breaking the bonds that poison you demands mourning. Allowing what no longer serves you to die means crossing through an invisible grief, a symbolic death that no one else can see, but that consumes everything inside you. And yet, in that internal collapse, when everything you thought you were begins to fall apart, something new begins to bloom. When the structures you relied on dissolve, when pain strips you bare and reveals the most tender parts of you, those you've hidden for years, only then can you truly see yourself. Not the role you were told to play, not the version you polished for others, just you, without armor, without masks. In that moment of radical vulnerability, suffering becomes sacred, because it brings you to your knees in front of the only thing that can ever truly set you free: yourself. Jung understood this. He saw that pain isn't a mistake in the system. It's not a punishment or a detour. It is part of the process, a necessary initiation. Suffering doesn't signal the end of your path. It is the door, the opening to the most meaningful journey of your life, the journey of becoming fully, completely, unapologetically yourself. The truth is, most people turn back before crossing the threshold. They retreat, they get distracted, they return to the surface, to that safer, duller place where things hurt less simply because they're felt less. But you're not like most people. If you're still here, if these words have found their way to you and you've followed them this far, it means something profound. You're ready to go deeper, ready to descend into the shadows, the sacred place where the soul is not only challenged, but forged. And in this descent, in this deliberate step away from the surface noise of the world, you will come to understand something that few ever do: the path to individuation, this intense, lonely, often brutal journey into the truth of who you are, is the only path that ever truly sets you free. Few dare to begin it. Even fewer have the courage to complete it. Why? Because this path doesn't offer comfort. It doesn't flatter your ego. It dismantles it. It doesn't offer safety or approval or guarantees. It offers something far more terrifying and far more liberating: transformation. Carl Jung called individuation the process of becoming who you truly are. But what he didn't sugarcoat is that before you can become that person, you must first unlearn everything you thought you were. You must let go of the identities, the narratives, the masks you've spent years, maybe your entire life, constructing. And that, no matter how strong you are, hurts. It hurts more than rejection, more than failure, more than loss, because in facing this inner reckoning, you realize that many of your beliefs, your values, your so-called truths were never truly yours. They were survival mechanisms, crafted identities to win love, to earn respect, to avoid abandonment. You are not your accomplishments. You are not your wounds. You are not the carefully curated version of yourself you show to the world to be accepted, loved, or admired. All of that was armor, a disguise, a survival suit woven from fear and longing. But existing in survival mode is not the same as living an individuation. The real call of your life is an invitation to rise above mere survival, to stop pretending, and to start being. And that's when something remarkable begins to happen. The unconscious, long buried beneath layers of denial and repression, begins to rise. It drags to the surface every truth you've hidden, every feeling you've silenced, every distorted part of yourself that you buried just to fit into a world that was never designed to understand you. Individuation demands the dissolution of the persona, Jung wrote, because the persona, the face we wear in public, is not real. It's a costume, a social agreement, a performance. And to find your essence, you must shed it, all of it. It's a symbolic peeling of your own skin, a stripping away so raw and complete that it feels like death. But it's in that brutal, relentless shedding where your true strength is born. Not because nothing can hurt you anymore, but because you have walked through fire and survived. You have faced the monsters of your own mind. You've stared down your shame, your neediness, your rage. And finally, you've said, "I see you. but you no longer control me. That is the beginning of real clarity, the kind that can't be taken away from you, the kind that gives you a quiet, unshakable power. You no longer need to win every argument. You don't need everyone's approval. You don't need to be adored, because now you know who you are. And that kind of knowing is untouchable. It becomes your armor, not a hard shell that disconnects you from the world, but a living core that supports you from within. This is what emotional resilience truly is, not becoming invulnerable, but becoming integrated. It's the deep union of all your parts, even the ones you once believed were unworthy, unlovable, unforgivable. You hold them now in a center of consciousness, so grounded, so alive, that you can stand tall in any storm. You can hurt, yes, but the pain won't break you. You can bleed, but you won't get lost in the wound. Because you've stopped reacting, you've started responding, not from fear, not from shame, but from your wholeness. You've stepped away from the shallow waters of life, and now you dwell in the depths of your being. But those depths come with a price: solitude. Not because you'll be alone, but because very few people will choose to follow you there. Most will cling to the surface, to their masks, to their need to avoid feeling too much. And as you begin to set yourself free, don't be surprised if you also begin to drift away from places, from people, from roles you once called home. But that distance, it's not rejection, it's not arrogance, it's not bitterness, it's maturity. A maturity born from the soul. You're not walking away to punish anyone. You're simply outgrowing the spaces where you once had to hide. Something inside you has awakened. Something is expanding, and it can no longer be contained. And so, we reach the final threshold. Consciousness as your shield. Because what protects you now is no longer strength in the conventional sense. It's clarity, radical, luminous clarity. This is the essence of the final stage, the understanding that consciousness is the only state in which nothing, absolutely nothing, has power over you anymore. You've come far, but now that you're here, one truth must be spoken with absolute precision. Nothing outside of you will ever protect you from suffering if you remain asleep to what lives inside you. Words will still cut, rejections will still sting, loss will still try to pull you under until you awaken. And let's be clear, awakening is not some magical moment. It's not a divine revelation that arrives without effort. It is a daily decision, a sacred, difficult choice to turn inward again and again, even when it hurts. It means choosing to feel rather than numb, to take responsibility for what you feel without blaming others, without blaming the past, without hiding behind fate or excuses. That is where your real life begins. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists, what you accept transforms." And you have resisted so much. You've resisted the fear of not being enough, the hollow ache that rejection leaves behind, the silent wound of loneliness, the inner turmoil of feeling unseen, unheard, unnoticed. You've carried these invisible weights, clenching your jaw, hiding your tears, pretending to be fine. You've worn strength like armor, not because you felt strong, but because the world gave you no other choice. What did you do with all of it? You hid. You became silent. You built invisible walls and tried to keep everything under control. You chased perfection, like your life depended on it. You worked so hard to appear unbreakable, to seem in control, to never let the cracks show. And now, here you are, tired, worn out, not just physically, but deep in your soul. You're exhausted from the battle, the one you fought not just against the world, but against yourself. but something inside you is starting to wake up because now, finally, you're beginning to understand. True emotional resilience is not about becoming harder. It's not about being cold or distant or indifferent. Real immunity isn't about shielding yourself from pain. It's about facing it with open eyes and an open heart. It's not about building thicker walls, but about gaining clearer vision, about seeing what's real and allowing yourself to feel it, all of it, without letting it break you. When you begin to understand your wounds, your emotional triggers, your reactions, your shadows, when you begin to witness them instead of fighting them, something shifts. Suddenly, the actions of others, their rejection, their criticism, their indifference, they lose their grip on you. They no longer have the power to destroy you. You still feel, but you no longer drown. You still experience pain, but you don't lose yourself in it. And that changes everything. What protects you isn't hiding from life, it's diving into it, fully, consciously, courageously, with eyes wide open. It's not about escaping pain, but about learning to hold it, to walk alongside it without letting it define you. Because those who stay on the surface are constantly bruised by every crashing wave. But those who dare to dive deep, who are brave enough to explore the dark, silent depths within, discover something extraordinary, a quiet place of balance, of clarity, of unshakable strength. And that is where you are heading. Maybe slowly, maybe unsure, but steadily. Toward that depth, toward that stillness, toward the place where nothing outside of you can knock you down anymore. Not because the world becomes kinder, but because you are no longer trying to be someone you're not. Because when you begin to live from that space, from integration, from presence, from radical self-acceptance, the world can try to knock you over, but it no longer finds a place in you to strike. So if any part of this message stirred something inside you, if even a sliver of your forgotten self blinked awake in these words, say it out loud or write it down somewhere, even if just for yourself. I choose awareness, I choose truth, I choose to feel, to heal, to live not in illusion, but in authenticity. Let us begin a movement, not of perfectly composed masks, but of honest souls. A movement of people who are no longer interested in merely surviving behind a facade of strength, but who are ready to live fully, vulnerably, awake. Because you deserve that, because the world needs that, and because the real transformation doesn't begin with the first step. It begins when you decide not to stop at the first step, when you choose to keep going, even trembling, even unsure, but alive, aware, and true. Let's begin again, but this time, as ourselves. That's all for today. Thanks for watching until the end of the video. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss anything. Let me know in the comments what you thought and what you'd like to see in the next video. See you soon. You're not here by accident. Something deep inside you led you to this exact moment, to this very video, and once you finish watching it, you'll begin to understand why. Maybe lately you felt overwhelmed, like your life is spinning into chaos, filled with uncertainty and challenges that seem to have no purpose or logic. But what if I told you that all of this might actually be the clearest sign that you're about to step into the most powerful, beautiful, and meaningful chapter of your life? What many people don't realize is that the universe always whispers before it shouts. It sends signs, nudges, and subtle signals before a massive shift occurs. The real tragedy is that most people never recognize these signals for what they are. They misinterpret them as bad luck, as misfortune, and they give up just before their breakthrough. But not you. You're here, and that already means you're paying attention. Today, I'm going to walk you through 7 of the most powerful signs that your life is on the verge of a profound transformation. And if you find yourself resonating with even 3 of them, prepare yourself, because a new reality is already unfolding. Let's start with the first sign. You begin questioning everything you thought you knew about life. If recently you've caught yourself reflecting on your beliefs, your values, your goals, or even your sense of purpose, it's not by chance. It's because something deep within you has already begun to shift. This internal transformation may not be visible on the surface yet, but it's very real. It's as if the old mental structures you once relied on are starting to crumble. And yes, it's uncomfortable, but that discomfort is sacred. It means you're waking up to a new version of yourself. The universe is inviting you to re-examine everything you've ever taken for granted, questioning your reality, your relationships, your direction. This isn't a crisis. It's an awakening. It's the universe urging you to dismantle the illusions you've been living under, so you can open the door to something far greater than you've ever imagined. This shift in perspective is necessary for your evolution. It's life, showing you that your mind is ready to expand, to embrace new ideas, and to step into a future that's aligned with your higher self. These questions: who am I really? What do I truly want? Am I living a life that honors my soul's calling? Are not just philosophical ponderings. They are portals. And once you step through them, there's no going back. Suddenly, the world feels unfamiliar. Things that once made perfect sense start to lose their meaning. Certainties vanish. And while that may feel like losing your footing, it's actually you finding your path. This disorientation is the universe's way of clearing the path, of making space for the real you to emerge, free from the old roles, expectations, and stories that no longer fit. It's like a spiritual cleansing, a death of the false self, so the authentic self can be born. The universe, in its wisdom, begins to strip away the masks, the lies, the outdated identities, and what remains is raw, honest, and real. And even though the process feels like chaos, it's actually creation. You are being rebuilt, stronger, wiser, and more attuned to the truth of who you really are. Remember this: questioning is not a detour. It's the beginning of the journey. You're not losing your way. You're finally starting to see it. And yes, it's scary when the familiar falls apart. But that falling apart is what makes space for something better. You're not broken. You're breaking free. And it's not just your beliefs that are being challenged. You may notice that your relationships, your habits, and even your daily routines are shifting. People who no longer align with your energy begin to fade away. Circumstances that once brought comfort may now feel suffocating. That's because you're shedding everything that doesn't resonate with your new frequency. Think of this as an internal detox, a filter that allows only what nourishes your soul to stay and releases everything else. And yes, that means letting go of comfort zones, of familiar pain, of the illusion of control. It's hard because these things may have once felt like parts of your identity, but they're not who you are. They were just tools for a different phase of your life. And what comes after? That's the magic. On the other side of this upheaval is a new version of you, more resilient, more conscious, and more aligned with your deepest truth. you'll begin to sense it. A subtle but powerful feeling, a mixture of fear and excitement, as if something big, something extraordinary is about to happen. And that feeling, that's not a coincidence. That's your intuition speaking. It's the sign that your consciousness is expanding, that you're dissolving the limitations you once placed on yourself. And as those internal walls begin to fall, something beautiful starts to grow. New dreams, new purpose, new energy. It's like pulling weeds from a garden to make room for vibrant, blossoming life. And here's where the magic truly unfolds. You'll start to receive answers, but not in the way you expect. They might come in the form of chance encounters, synchronistic events, a stranger's words, or a book that mysteriously finds its way into your hands. These moments, seemingly random, carry messages tailored specifically for you. Even if you don't have all the answers yet, you'll feel it. You're on the right path. Because the very act of questioning is transformation in motion. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. The kind of wisdom that emerges when you stop pretending and start listening. Listening to yourself, to your soul, to the universe. And as you continue to lean into this process, you'll notice the external world beginning to reflect your inner shifts. That's the beauty of alignment. Your reality begins to change, not because the world has changed, but because you have. You've raised your frequency. You've opened your eyes. You've reclaimed your power. So don't fear the questions. Welcome them. Embrace the uncertainty. Allow yourself to feel the discomfort, because it means you're growing. And every great transformation begins this way, with confusion, with doubt, with a sense of falling apart. But what you're really doing is falling into place. And when you finally surrender to this process, you'll start seeing the signs the universe has been sending you all along. They've always been there, waiting for you to be ready. And now, you are. The second sign. You begin to feel a growing disconnection from your past. One of the clearest and most powerful indicators that you're on the verge of entering a new chapter in your life. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual, subtle shift that begins deep within you, often so quietly that you don't even notice it at first. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, the things that once excited you, that motivated you, that filled you with purpose and energy, they begin to lose their power over you. Maybe you've realized that the hobbies, the conversations, or the routines that once brought you joy now feel hollow. It's as if you're looking at the same world, but through different eyes. Eyes that no longer light up at the same sights. Ears that no longer respond to the same sounds. The people you once felt deeply connected to, the places that once felt like home, now seem distant, almost foreign. You begin to notice that the emotions tied to those experiences have faded, and in their place is a quiet sense of detachment. This shift is not random. It's not a fleeting mood or a phase that will pass with time. It's something far deeper, far more profound. It is your soul, gently but firmly, nudging you forward. It's telling you that you've outgrown certain moments, certain relationships, certain versions of yourself. Your perception of life is evolving, and as that perception changes, so too do your goals, your desires, your values, and your connections. And suddenly, the things that once formed the foundation of your identity no longer feel like they belong to you. They feel like echoes of a life you once lived, shadows of a self you no longer are. It's a confusing experience. You don't always know where you're going or what you're supposed to become, but you know with certainty that you can't go back. You can't keep pretending that the old life fits the new version of you. It simply doesn't. Your previous routines, the job that once defined your worth, the social circles you used to feel part of, even the thoughts that guided your day-to-day life, these all begin to unravel. And yes, this unraveling can be deeply unsettling. It can feel like loss, but at the same time, it is one of the strongest signs of personal transformation. It's your inner being making space. It's you shedding your old skin so that something far more aligned with your true essence can emerge. Letting go of the familiar is never easy. There's a kind of mourning that happens when you release parts of your identity that once felt permanent. But this disconnection you're experiencing is not meant to punish you. It's meant to prepare you. It is making room for what's next. Think of it as a clearing in the forest, freshly opened by time and change, ready to receive new life. What's coming may not be visible yet, but it's growing, silently, just beneath the surface. The loss of interest in your past is a sacred signal from the universe, one that tells you, even if you don't yet understand, that something new is on its way. This isn't about abandoning everything you've known. It's about unbinding yourself from the things that have fulfilled their purpose. It's about loosening the grip on attachments that no longer support your growth. You're entering a time in your life where you're being called to release. Release the roles you've played, the patterns you've repeated, and the masks you've worn. You're being invited to step into a life that reflects who you are becoming, not who you once were. This transformation doesn't always make sense. It may feel uncertain. It may feel like the ground is shifting beneath you. But within that uncertainty lies the promise of something beautiful: expansion, rebirth, and the chance to rediscover yourself in ways you never imagined possible. The feeling of disconnection is just the beginning. Beneath it lies a cascade of internal changes. You begin to notice that your beliefs are evolving, especially the limiting ones you never questioned before. That old version of yourself, the one who accepted certain truths, lived according to external expectations, followed the crowd, starts to fade. You begin to question things you once took for granted. Maybe you start to look inward more often, finding that the world outside no longer holds all the answers. Maybe you feel that your old structures are crumbling, not in a way that destroys you, but in a way that liberates you. You might even struggle to define who you are in this new space. But despite that uncertainty, one thing is crystal clear. You're not the same person anymore. You're evolving, you're expanding, and that old skin no longer fits. There is a burning desire within you to be reborn, to step into a version of yourself that is bolder, freer, and more authentic. You may not know yet what that version looks like, but you can feel it calling to you. As this sense of disconnection deepens, fear can creep in. Fear of letting go, fear of losing what's familiar, fear of stepping into the unknown. But hand in hand with that fear comes liberation. There is freedom in no longer needing to be who you used to be. There is strength in releasing what no longer supports your highest path. That empty space you feel inside, it's not emptiness at all. It's potential. It's the womb of new beginnings. It's the signal that something far more aligned with your soul is about to emerge. And yes, it may be uncomfortable. Growth often is. But that discomfort is the gateway to clarity. And with time, clarity comes. You stop looking outside yourself for guidance. You stop relying on others to define your path. Instead, you turn inward. You begin to trust your inner wisdom, your intuition, your heart, your soul. The noise of the world starts to fade, and in its place rises a steady, quiet voice within you. That voice becomes your compass. It becomes your truth. You stop clinging to the past. You stop trying to revive the old. Instead, you open yourself to possibility. You allow yourself to grow into someone new. Every day brings you closer to a more honest version of who you really are. Not the version molded by fear or obligation or expectation, but the version that has always been waiting for you beneath the surface. So if you find yourself drifting away from who you once were, if your old life no longer fits, if the people, habits, and dreams that once felt essential now feel distant, know this: your soul is guiding you. It's leading you to a new beginning. And no, disconnection is not the end. It is the quiet, sacred beginning of the transformation you were always meant to experience. The real journey is just beginning. Third sign, you find yourself questioning what you once thought was important. Have you ever noticed that what used to feel essential no carries the same weight anymore? It's as if you're suddenly seeing life from a completely different angle. Things that once worried you seem to lose their grip. Material goals, other people's opinions, and social expectations begin to fade in the presence of something far more meaningful. You start questioning what truly matters to you. Your career, money, fame, they all seem like small pieces of a much bigger picture you couldn't quite see before. You begin to realize that the true meaning of life isn't about meeting society's standards, but about living in alignment with what genuinely resonates within you. It's like a filter has fallen away, allowing you to see past the surface and into the essence of who you are. This inner questioning isn't always easy. It can stir up uncertainty, even make you feel lost amid a sea of conflicting ideas. But that very space of not knowing is fertile ground for personal growth. That's the place where new answers begin to surface, answers that come from within, not from outside voices. Life starts revealing to you that fulfillment doesn't come from accumulating things, but from the experiences that enrich your soul and the relationships that nourish your spirit. This questioning can even spark a complete reevaluation of your purpose. Why are you here? What do you truly want to experience? The answers don't always come instantly, but what's certain is that you're beginning to open up to new possibilities. What once felt indispensable is losing its power, making way for new interests, new passions, and a deeper longing to connect with what truly matters. This is a clear sign that you're preparing for a radical transformation. The universe is guiding you toward what truly fulfills you, toward your authentic path. And although it may all feel confusing at first, this is actually the doorway to a more conscious life, one aligned with your purest essence. This shift in perspective usually happens gradually, but once it begins, you realize it can no longer be ignored. You start to notice that the things that used to give you a sense of security now feel hollow. You no longer feel the need to follow the flow of what society defines as success. It's as if a new energy is taking hold of you, pulling you toward a more authentic life, one that's less influenced by external expectations. This process isn't just about rejecting the old, it's about allowing the new to enter. The passions and interests you may have set aside are suddenly reclaiming your attention. Maybe you're rediscovering old activities you had forgotten, or even exploring new areas you never thought to consider. You no longer care about fitting into a system or following a well-worn path. Instead, you're seeking a road that reflects your true values, your real purpose, the one only you can define. This questioning may also come with a temporary sense of loneliness. At first, you might feel disconnected from old friends or your usual social circle. It's a natural part of distancing yourself from external expectations in order to find your inner truth. But don't be afraid. It's only temporary. That loneliness becomes the space where self-awareness can grow, and over time, you'll start attracting people who share your new vision, people who resonate with your evolving worldview. It's like experiencing a reset. What no longer serves you starts to fade, and in its place, a renewed energy connects you with what genuinely matters. This process of questioning isn't a crisis, it's an awakening that prepares you for something bigger, deeper, and more aligned with your purpose. And although the journey toward that discovery might seem uncertain at first, you'll come to understand that it's exactly what you needed to become the best version of yourself. Fourth sign. You feel more connected to your intuition than ever before. It's a fascinating phenomenon that arises when you're on the brink of making a major leap in your life. It's as if a new kind of inner clarity gets activated within you. Suddenly, life begins to make more sense, as if everything carries a deeper meaning, and every choice feels more natural. What once felt uncertain now becomes obvious. You're no longer lost in the chaos of your thoughts. Something within starts guiding you, showing you which direction to take. Intuition is that inner voice, that gut feeling that tells you what to do even without needing all the answers or logical explanations. It's the sense of knowing that something is aligned with your true self, even if you can't explain why. The key lies in learning to trust that inner wisdom. As you begin to do so, you'll notice that making decisions becomes easier because you're acting from a deeper place, one that's more connected to who you truly are. This awakening of intuition isn't something that happens overnight. It often starts with small signs, like a hunch that leads you to take a different path, or a wave of calm that embraces you during uncertain moments. At first, it might be hard to recognize, especially since the noise of everyday life tends to drown out that inner voice. But as you start giving it space and begin listening more closely, you'll see how it grows stronger and clearer. Intuition can show up in various forms, sometimes as a physical sensation in the body, other times as a thought that appears out of nowhere, or even as an unexplainable certainty about a person or situation. As you grow more attuned to it, you'll begin to realize that your choices are no longer purely rational. They come from a deeper knowing that's more in tune with your essence. It won't matter if you don't fully understand why something draws you in or pushes you away, because that feeling of certainty is the beginning of a powerful transformation that's about to unfold. As you continue nurturing this connection with your intuition, you'll start noticing that events which once seemed random or messy now have a pattern, as if the pieces of a puzzle are finally fitting together. Your life starts flowing more naturally, more smoothly, because you feel, in some unexplainable way, that you're in the right place, at the right time, doing exactly what you're meant to do. You no longer feel the urge to overanalyze every step, because you trust that your intuition is guiding you toward the right path. This awakening also allows you to notice things that once went unseen. You'll be able to read between the lines, sense the energy of people and situations, and grasp more deeply what's truly happening around you. Sometimes it's not about what's being said, but what's being felt. And now, you'll be much more open to those subtle vibrations. The most amazing part about this sign is that the more you trust your intuition, the more you begin to feel a deep sense of peace and security that you never knew before. Even if you don't have all the answers, even if the future is still a mystery, that strong feeling of being aligned with your purpose will be so powerful, nothing will be able to pull you off your path. Fear and doubt begin to lose their grip because your decisions no longer come from a place of fear, but from a deep understanding of yourself and the universe around you. This marks the beginning of a phase of self-discovery and empowerment. As you continue learning to listen to your intuition, you'll notice that the choices you make bring you closer to your true essence. Life starts to flow with a grace you never imagined, simply because you're now aligned with the natural rhythm of your being. Yes, you feel more drawn to the idea of personal growth. As this new chapter unfolds, you notice your mind opening wider than ever before. You're no longer content with what you once knew, nor with the version of yourself you used to accept. It feels as if a profound desire for personal expansion is rising from within. You no longer want to just exist, but to evolve, to improve, to push your limits. This inner drive for growth begins to guide your thoughts and actions. You find yourself constantly seeking new knowledge through books, courses, experiences, or even conversations with people who challenge the way you think. Knowledge, new skills, and transformative experiences draw you in like never before. It's as if you're hungry to learn more, to grow more, to become a more authentic and powerful version of yourself. This thirst for learning and self-discovery leads you to explore parts of yourself you never thought to uncover. From your hidden passions to your deepest limitations, you sense that there's no time to waste, that now is the time to embrace every opportunity to reinvent yourself. And it's not just about intellectual curiosity, it's about a longing to feel whole, to align more closely with your values and your purpose. This longing for growth also connects you to a transformative energy, a feeling that nothing is impossible if you are willing to evolve. You find yourself more open to releasing old limiting beliefs and welcoming new perspectives that move you forward. This personal development isn't just a desire, it's becoming an inner necessity, one that will reflect in every part of your life. What once seemed like a clear and defined path now feels uncertain, as though you need to discover new directions, new ways of thinking and acting. Personal growth is no longer just a choice, it's a priority. You're ready to embark on a journey that won't just change your outer world, it will reshape your inner self in ways you can't yet fully comprehend. You begin asking deeper questions. Who am I really? What is my purpose? What do I truly want to do with my life? This period of questioning is no accident. It's a clear sign that your mind is ready to expand, to break out of the comfort zone you once thought was enough. You're not just searching for answers. You're craving a transformation that elevates you to a higher level of awareness, where the ordinary begins to feel extraordinary. At the same time, you feel a pull toward healing. It's not only intellectual growth, it's also emotional and spiritual. You start confronting old wounds, limiting beliefs, and mental patterns that no longer serve you. You're ready to let them go, understanding that only by releasing the past can you make room for the new. And while this process can be challenging, it becomes one of the most exciting parts of your journey toward a more authentic self. Your life starts to revolve more around what truly matters: growth, connection, authenticity. These begin to outweigh the small concerns and superficial distractions that once consumed your attention. You are now ready to move beyond the daily routine, to make meaningful changes that align with your deepest desires. You may start surrounding yourself with people who also feel this urge to grow and transform. People who challenge you to be better, think differently, and explore new ideas and perspectives. You're no longer seeking external validation or clinging to outdated beliefs. You're seeking a more meaningful and authentic life, a life that reflects the truest version of who you are. Sign number 6. You're feeling an intense desire to break free from toxic relationships and situations that no longer resonate with you. At this stage of your life, you're beginning to notice how certain people and circumstances that once felt like home now seem completely out of place. The things you used to tolerate, the behaviors you once excused, and the environments you once accepted as normal now feel heavy, draining, or simply disconnected from who you are becoming. You're not just outgrowing these dynamics, you're evolving past them. What once felt familiar and even comforting no longer aligns with your evolving values, your deeper sense of purpose, or your inner peace. You're undergoing a profound transformation, and that process is making it impossible to ignore the weight of what's been holding you back. It's like waking up from a long sleep and realizing that some of the people and patterns you kept close were never really helping you thrive. They were just keeping you in place. And now, something has shifted inside of you. There's a clarity emerging, a powerful awareness that you no longer want to remain stuck in connections that drain your energy or keep you in a state of emotional turbulence. It doesn't matter how long you've known someone, how much effort you've invested, or how familiar the situation feels. If it doesn't support your growth, it's time to let it go. You no longer fear the uncertainty that comes with change, because the discomfort of staying in a place that no longer feels right has become greater than the fear of the unknown. This urge to distance yourself from toxic energy isn't about rejecting others with resentment. It's about honoring yourself with love. It's not selfish to choose peace, to seek clarity, to protect your energy. It's self-respect. You're beginning to understand that in order to become the best version of yourself, you must first be willing to step away from what dims your light. You can't build a future that feels true to you if you're still anchored to the past through relationships that no longer reflect who you are. What's unfolding within you is a sacred act of self-liberation. It's the understanding that you deserve to be surrounded by people who uplift you, who challenge you in ways that promote your growth, who see you clearly and love you for who you truly are. You're not looking for perfection. You're looking for authenticity, for realness, for mutual respect and emotional safety. And while the process of letting go can be painful because endings are never easy, it's also one of the most empowering things you can do for yourself. It's a declaration that your well-being matters, that your peace matters, that your time, your heart, your energy, they all matter. You no longer want to sacrifice those things for the sake of comfort or fear. You've realized that clinging to what's familiar isn't worth the cost of your personal evolution. As you release what no longer serves you, something beautiful begins to happen. You start attracting people and experiences that are in true alignment with your soul. New connections begin to blossom, ones that feel light, expansive, inspiring. You find yourself in the company of those who get you, who support your path, who encourage your dreams rather than belittle them. These are the relationships that add value to your life. They don't drain you, They fuel you, and slowly you begin to rebuild. A new chapter begins, one filled with genuine bonds that replace the superficial ones. The kind of connections that don't just fill the space, but nurture your spirit. You stop settling for half-hearted relationships and begin welcoming the kind of love, whether in friendship, family, or romance, that sees you, hears you, and respects you. This is the sign that you're preparing for a new and extraordinary stage in your life, one where you are more in tune with who you truly are, one where peace is prioritized, where your heart is safe, and where your soul is finally free to grow, to love, and to live without restraint. This is more than just a shift. It's your rebirth. Sign number 7. You begin to feel a powerful disconnection from everything that no longer serves you. As you step into this new phase of your life, you start to notice that what once felt essential, meaningful, or even irreplaceable now carries far less weight. It's as if something deep within you has shifted. Your perspective is changing. Your energy is transforming. And what once seemed to define your world now begins to fade into the background. Relationships that used to feel vital may now feel strained or disconnected. Activities that once filled you with joy might now seem hollow or repetitive. Even familiar places, spots that once gave you comfort, might suddenly feel distant or unfamiliar. And no, this doesn't mean that your past was a mistake or that your choices were wrong. It simply means you're evolving. You're shedding layers of an identity that no longer fits. You're stepping into a more aligned version of yourself, and in doing so, certain pieces of your old life naturally begin to fall away. This disconnection might feel uncomfortable at first. There can be moments of confusion, sadness, or nostalgia. You might question yourself, why don't I enjoy this anymore? Or why do I feel so distant from people I used to love? And yet, amidst that discomfort, there's a subtle but undeniable feeling of freedom. It's like breathing fresh air after being in a closed room for too long. You may not understand everything that's happening, but something inside you knows it's time to let go. You begin to notice that certain habits, routines, or even thought patterns no longer resonate with your current state of being. What once consumed your attention now barely moves you. Old fears lose their grip. Constant worries seem less urgent. And while this can bring a sense of loss, it also carries with it a profound sense of peace. There's a sacred silence that follows the letting go, an inner calm that wasn't there before. You're not just releasing the old, you're making room for the new. And this new is not just something external. It's a deeper alignment with who you truly are becoming. This isn't a sudden transformation. It unfolds slowly, almost quietly. Day by day, the shift deepens. You might wake up one morning and realize you no longer feel passionate about something that once defined your identity. Or you might find that conversations with certain people leave you drained rather than inspired. This isn't about betrayal. It's not about abandoning your past or rejecting the people in it. It's about honoring your evolution, recognizing that growth often means outgrowing. You're cultivating a more refined awareness of what truly matters. Your inner compass is recalibrating. You understand that in order to move forward, you must release what no longer nourishes your soul. It could be a job, a friendship, a belief system, or simply a version of yourself that no longer feels true. This process is sacred. It's part of your becoming. And while it may not always be easy, it is necessary. Remember, the universe has a unique way of guiding us. sometimes gently, sometimes abruptly, but always purposefully. If you're hearing these words right now, if they resonate even a little, trust that it's not by accident. You were meant to receive this message. Something within you is awakening. A deeper wisdom is rising to the surface. And if you follow it, if you trust this inner knowing, you are about to enter a chapter of your life where everything starts to make sense. What happens when you finally take control of your life with full awareness of these signs? What shifts when you stop clinging to what was and start welcoming what's meant to be? A powerful awakening awaits, one that has the potential to reshape everything you thought you knew. You're not just changing your circumstances, you're expanding your consciousness. You're aligning with a version of reality where peace, clarity, and authenticity are your new foundation. This is the beginning of something extraordinary. Stay curious, stay open. The journey ahead is not just about growth, it's about transformation. You're not alone on this path. And if you feel called to keep exploring your personal evolution, continue walking with us. There's so much more to uncover. We'll meet again soon, and together, we'll keep growing, expanding, and stepping into the truth of who we really are.